one of the 4 documents to which I referred?
If it is, that's just, my memory fails me if that's the case, but if the November 1st 1995 Watchtower is in the those letters, it's just gone from my memory, sorry, but I'm certain it's in the submission documents.
Doesn't this present a bit of a difficulty to an elder in a congregation somewhere who's faced with an allegation of child sexual abuse, if it's so difficult to determine where this material is on that's still current, on which he can rely?
Well, it would be if he didn't ring the branch office, but that's why his first instruction on every occasion is to contact the branch office, and these are the references, remembering with respect that most of these elders we've spoken to, family men, have dealt with one of these issues in their entire decades as an elder. Some of them may never be confronted with it in their lifetime. So that instruction for elders to ring the branch office, where we assist with the myriad of references, I think Dr. Applewhite acknowledged that we have flooded the website and our publications with references. So what you say is true, that's why they ring the branch office.
What about, excuse me, a victim of child sexual abuse? Do you accept that to such a person there should be a clear policy and procedure as to how the organisation will respond and how that victim is to raise an allegation?
I think that's an extremely valid point, and one that in our discussions over the last 2 weeks from hearing the Commissioner's comments, that for us to take these references from various places and have them consolidated into a much clearer format, I absolutely agree.
Because you'll accept that the current position is a victim wanting to report an allegation would be left very uncertain as to how it all works.
Would they be able to turn to a document that steps out sequentially what's required? I would say not. Would they, in referencing currently on the jw.org website, and I know there are no absolutes, but I would be surprised if a single Jehovah's Witness in this country does not regularly access the jw.org website, type in child abuse, and all the references are there, many of which encourage the benefits of confiding in somebody, talking to the elders. But is there a document? There's not.
Well, Doctor, you just heard the discussion. Mr. Spinks, you heard the discussion with Mr. Tockley about this.
Yep.
And I understand that what you say, there's lots of references. But inherent in what Mr. Tockley has said is that an individual would not know what confronts them because, as he puts it, it's necessary to consult and mould a process to the individual case.
Yes.
So that taking them to documents, but with the expectation that each case will be treated differently, doesn't really help very much, does it?
Your Honour, I respectfully agree that what the Commission has clearly identified is that there's no shortage of references and research material, but does that need to be presented in a more user-friendly and appropriate? I totally agree.
Well, it's more than that. You understand the concerns that the Commissioner and I have about your current accepted processes, and I stress again, I appreciate that they've been developed with an understanding of the Bible. But do you see the conflict that's emerging between what you're adhering to there and what we have learnt in more recent years about the process of verifying an allegation of sexual abuse?
I absolutely understand the point, Your Honour.
Well, that's the one that needs to be addressed in a really significant way. I mean, is it appropriate to continue to require victims to confront their abuser in order for there to be a determination within the church, or are you in fact running the risk of further traumatising people who are already traumatised? by their abuse?
I totally agree, Your Honour. If I could, with respect, and the last thing I want in any way is to appear defensive. That's not my intention. We've looked in this commission at two situations that, as they have for others, have distressed me to hear it through step by step. Are there things that would be done differently today? As I watched that, I went back to the branch because I know what I've done, I know what I'm aware of. Have we asked or expected a victim to confront their abuser without them wanting to do that? I can't find a record of us having done that.
That's not the point. That's not the point. Your whole teaching, of course, requires adherence from your members to your principles. Correct?
To Bible principles,
yeah,
yes.
And that's what's happening. And I don't think you deal with the problem by saying no one resisted confronting their abuser. You've heard evidence here about the trauma that it inflicted upon someone who was required to. And if the church has the expectation, and that's the only way the allegation can be dealt with, then you've got a problem. It won't be answered by saying no one in our files has said they don't want to their abuser. That won't happen.
I apologise for interrupting. I apologise for what if I've misrepresented that, Your Honour, but from the mid-1990s, here in Australia, we have used the statement. I went back myself through the case files over the last number of years, and one after the other found where we've directed, and the elders have simply asked the survivor, the victim, to provide in writing their allegation, where we have not directed the victim to confront their accuser. And I think some of the basis for that misunderstanding is that, one, we've been looking at cases from over 20 years ago, that's true. And secondly, we've, since the mid-1990s, have perhaps not as professionally as others or efficiently as others, but we've recognised that a victim or survivor should not have to confront their abuser, and we do that.
Well, that needs to be put in your documents.
Absolutely.
It's not there at the moment.
Well, again, with respect, Your Honour, that's exactly the question I asked myself, and I said, if I had to say to you, where is that clearly stated? And I found the document, but I have a concern about, at this stage of the Commission, presenting an outline that was presented to all elders in Australia that should have been in the documents. It's not that says don't get the victim to confront the abuser. Now, I'm not suggesting that if there's a process, if that could be just introduced into the documents for your consideration.
Yes, please. If there's any document that's going to help us, we'd like to see it.
So, and Your Honour, how that came to be found was through my assistant. We had the note in our previous Elders Handbook from 1991, but none of us had it until we found one of the older members of the department that had actually photocopied and reduced it and stuck it in his book. So I went and found it. It's called a 337A form, printed May 1998.
Well, look, we'd like to see it.
But
I get the impression it hasn't been widely known.
It's part of, have we produced that to elders? No. They were taught it in 1998, and if it was written in the book here, that would be very helpful.
Well,
but I'm happy to produce it.
Please do. That's not the only issue, you know.
Appreciate that.
That we have to confront.
Just in relation to what is printed, you see the difficulty, it seems to me, with what's published over time and with you not committing to, or not being able to commit to just what the corpus of documents is that is the source for these policies and procedures. It's a bit like trying to put your finger on a ball of mercury. Just when you think you've got it, it pops up somewhere else. So just when one thinks one understands what's being said on a particular point, then an article from 1975 Awake will be produced to say, oh, but look, we also say this. And how's anyone to know just what the position is?
It's a very valid comment, and I can only repeat again that has the Commission highlighted to us my discussions with our branch committee over the last 2 weeks. We've looked and said, why don't we get these points into a document? We see the point, I accept it and acknowledge it.
Well, that raises the next point, of course, and that is what these documents that I've referred to, at least, excluding the scriptures that I assume can't be changed, but the 4 that I've referred to, but also the Awake and Watchtower articles, those all are determined and published from New York, is that right?
Correct.
What scope do you at the branch office have to publish your own material which might set it all out nice and clearly?
As long as we don't stray from the scriptures, which is the primary role of the governing body worldwide, if we don't stray from the scriptures, the Australia branch has full authority to produce documents to clearly set out for seminars, letters to elders, letters to publishers, what needs to be made clear locally. So the Australia Branch Committee certainly has that authority.
And who will be the judge of whether you've, whether your document meets that requirement of not transgressing the scriptures?
Well, I think anything I say is going to appear immodest, Mr. Stewart, but I think the one thing Jehovah's Witnesses can do, whether others agree with it, is make application of the scriptures to our way of life. So if your point is, does that need approval from the governing body or from another source, I would say if whatever we do, if it's in harmony with scripture, is a matter that can be dealt with by the local branch office.
If you to publish something new which sets out how child sexual abuse allegations are to be dealt with within congregations in Australia, would you need to get the clearance or the go-ahead from the governing body that what you've set out is fine because it's not in conflict with the scriptures?
I think the documents would show that we correspond openly with the governing body on matters of interpretation. I think my point is clear that if recommendations from this Commission and some things that we can obviously see ourselves. So, for example, if there is a legal requirement, whether it's because of mandatory reporting or because of a criminal law that's less familiar to me than you, but if there are legal implications and we are working outside of those, you can be certain that an adjustment will be made here in Australia and a document produced relative to Australia, including collating those, as you see it, and correctly so, references from decades that would be better into a single document tailored for the law, the culture, the expectation here in Australia. Absolutely.
And you would only do that through engagement with the governing body?
That's as many things could be done here in Australia. What I'm saying is we have such great respect for the governing body. We'd have no issue at all with corresponding with them back and forward. I'm confident there'll be no issue if we don't stray from the scriptures, that they are happy for each branch committee, remembering that those members of the governing body are simply as well unpaid members of the organisation that are selected from elders from different countries. So that's not the issue. The issue is it in harmony with the scriptures? And is it appropriate here in Australia? And the Australia Branch Committee would have that.
Mr. Spinks, just on the question of harmony with the scriptures, is it not the case that over time within the Jehovah's Witness Church there's been a development or change in understanding of certain scriptures?
Yes.
So it's not the case then that the scriptures are clearly have the same meaning to everyone. It may be that meanings and understandings change over time, is that right?
I think it's fair to say if we feel that we've got something wrong or have misapplied a scripture, we not only adjust it, but we publish it for all the world to see. So that's true.
The point is if the Australia branch in publishing a new or consolidating and publishing a new procedure regarded themselves to be in harmony with the scriptures, it may be that the governing body took a different view.
I couldn't say that wouldn't be the case, but I think the point clearly is that whether it's a branch committee as experienced as ours here in Australia, some of them perhaps with more years experience than some of the members of the governing body, I don't think that would be the issue. But if you're saying the need for open communication, that's there, but the Australia Branch Committee would have that responsibility.
Well, I'm taking one step further. Practically, in effect, you would need the agreement of the governing body to any new process or procedure that you published, wouldn't you?
I don't think that's correct, because
if they disagreed, it would mean that you were not in harmony with the scriptures.
I think it's such a hypothetical, Mr. Stewart, that if we did something that's in harmony with Scripture, for example, if mandatory reporting was required here in Australia, we don't need the approval of the governing body because the Scriptures give us the approval to comply. So I would say with respect, the only communication, other than the fact that we've got great respect and would communicate openly from the governing body, would be if we had clearly misapplied the Scriptures somewhere.
Well, let's take a different hypothetical. If you in Australia, through your considerable experience and learning, came to the view that there'd been a misunderstanding of the scripture that requires that applies and requires the two-witness rule, and your conclusion was that it did not, and before you could make that part of your process, you would have to get the go-ahead of the governing body, wouldn't you?
I don't think anyone of Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia is ever going to write to the governing body and suggest that we've misunderstood Jesus Christ's clearly recorded words in the gospel, but it's a difficult hypothetical because no one's going to write that letter.
I'm just understanding what in harmony with the scriptures means. I take it that the 4 documents I've referred to, which set out the procedure, those are in harmony with the scriptures.
I think we've done our best. If there's something that's not, please, if you brought it to our attention or any one of Jehovah's Witnesses did, we're happy to look at it. But our understanding is that the material we prepare, we do our best to make it in harmony with the scriptures.
And in some respects, it sets out what the scriptural requirements are, such as, for example, the two-witness rule.
They're referred to in the letters, yes.
And there are many other aspects where the scriptural requirement is actually identified and referenced, not so.
I think you can see that right through our documents.
So is it the case that, as I would understand it, that the governing body, at least I withdraw that the Australia branch would not be able to adopt and publish a new procedure that was not in harmony with the 4 documents that I've mentioned?
I'm just trying to get my head around the hypothetical, but if there was something in the 2012 letter, for example, that was not applicable in Australia, that letter, while the spiritual concepts and essence of it have come from the governing body, that letter is produced in Australia, and if there was something that was not applicable in Australia, the Australia Branch Committee is obligated to adjust it.
Well, the letter's produced in Australia, but it's done on the basis of almost word for word what was produced to you from the governing body in the United States.
And that's because that letter, it's based on scriptural principles. So I certainly personally didn't see anything in that letter that needs adjusting for Australia.
Well, let's take something, for example, that's just presumably, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, not based on scriptural principle. In tab 120, that's the shepherd the flock, at page 131, which is what you were looking at previously, paragraph 18, it says, in case of child abuse, you, that's the elder, should immediately call the branch office for direction. So now that's a very clear direction. If in Australia you took the view that that's not the best way and that the elder should immediately do something else and only thereafter call the branch office, would you be free to adopt and publish a procedure which differed with that direction?
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.